My last two videos have been over the book of Job and then the biblical Satan, and that led me naturally to Satanism. But I decided to best just start with the Satanic Bible itself because this was the formation of the modern religion that we see. It's important to know before we go into the book who LaVey was. Born in 1930, LaVey was a musician. He actually taught himself to play piano by ear by the age of 10, according to this book. Don't always know if these things are true. However, he was performing the organ at the circuses and at churches, where he saw men being pervs on Saturday nights with the ladies at the circus, and then Sunday morning he would see all of those same men with their wives and their children as he was playing organ for the church. When he was in his early 20s, he became a crime photographer, thinking this will be my job, my regular person career. But instead of becoming the normal job he anticipated, made him question, where is God? This is terrible. I'm seeing horrible things on a daily basis. So when we combine LaVey's early experience with hypocrisy, dealing with sex, and then also his experience photographing horrible things, we can see how that may have transformed his ideology into one that's very adversarial to the Christian one he was born under the influence of. So LaVey, after running out of ambition for his photography job, went back to playing the organ, except this time for nightclubs because he was older. Here he found like-minded individuals that allowed him to form the magic circle. Over time, they were practicing ceremonies, rituals, learning more about the dark arts. He was teaching the dark arts, and then eventually it culminated into 1966 when LaVey shaved his head and declared the start of the Satanic Church. Not only that, but he wore a clerical collar, stating that his church would uplift the flesh and the ego, unlike the other right-hand path churches that put down man, his ego, and his ambitions. At first, one might wonder that forming a satanic church as an adversary to the regular church is sort of confusing because you still have a church, and LaVey would agree with you. However, he just found the term useful for getting the message out. Obviously, marketing-wise, it makes a bigger impact if you say satanic church. To finalize your religion, you need a religious text, which is why LaVey wrote the Satanic Bible and what the topic of this video will be about today. It's a book with a lot of strange details in it, albeit I do find some of them philosophically uplifting, but let's get into that. To spare you some time, here are the 5 major points of the Satanic Bible that I took away. Number 1, thoughts and prayers are useless. Number 2, rituals are an act to fulfill desire. Number 3, the 7 deadly sins are worship. Number 4, indulgence, not compulsion. And number 5, beware of psychic vampires. Some interesting topics to get into. Let's just go one by one. Thoughts and prayers being useless. We can see a couple. So the Satanic Bible, it's a Bible because it's multiple books. This is what Bible means, is multiple books. There's the book of the fire, air, earth, and water, all being written under the sort of metaphorical emphasis of whatever deity is associated with that element. So for fire, we have Satan. In the book of Satan, or the book of fire, we see what LaVey's thoughts are on prayer. Blessed are the strong, for they shall possess the earth. Cursed are the weak, for they shall inherit the yoke. Blessed are the powerful, cursed are the feeble. Blessed are the bold, cursed are the righteously humble. I wasn't joking when I was saying LaVey is the great Christian adversary. He's taking biblical text and just literally writing the opposite of that, where the Bible will say that the meek will inherit the earth. LaVey goes, no, the mighty and the strong will. In the book of Air, book of Lucifer, in the Enlightenment chapter, it is a popular misconception that the Satanist does not believe in God. Man has always created his gods rather than his gods creating him. God is, to some, benign, to others, terrifying. God is seen as the balancing factor in nature and not as being concerned with suffering. The universe is far too impersonal to care about the happiness or misery of flesh and blood creatures. I didn't know a lot about Satanism going into this. So when I was reading this, I was a bit surprised to go, they don't worship Satan in that way, or they don't make sacrifices to Satan. No, they don't, or at least from the Satanic Bible and LaVey's thoughts, this is pointless. LaVey sees this as man creating his own gods, and that you are worshiping this symbol of nature, this symbol of destruction and reconstruction that has been going on forever. Now, the rituals themselves are also rather, more boring than I thought, to be honest. I mean, later on, if you get into the Satanic Rituals, which is another book I'll read later, it gets more spicy. But in the actual Satanic Bible itself, it's rather tame. I mean, the rituals revolve around sex. There is a sex act in them. Otherwise, they're merely just to fulfill human desire. There's no sort of raising of Satan from a pentagram or something. Here, LaVey talks about it in the book of Lucifer, the book of the air. Pretty much all the quotes are going to come from that, because the air book is where a lot of the details are, and the other ones are more about, poetry or rituals or rules, etc., etc. LaVey says, man needs ritual and dogma, but no law states that an externalized God is necessary in order to engage in ritual and ceremony. Later on, he's quoted as saying, it is unnecessary to sell your soul to the devil or make pact with Satan. This threat was devised by Christianity to terrorize people so they would not stray from the fold. With scolding fingers and trembling voices, they taught their followers that if they gave in to the temptations of Satan, they would have to pay for their sinful pleasures by suffering in hell for all eternity. Satanism has roots that come from Christians themselves, where they would sort of demonify other groups by stating that they worship Satan as an excuse to F them up. Here we're seeing that a lot of these misconceptions, like you are selling your soul to Satan, which is something, as I grew up Mennonite, I thought that was a gimme in Satanism, is that you had to sell your soul to Satanism or you weren't allowed in the club. Here we see that also is not true, and that's a construction of the church, not coming from Satanists or the Satanic Bible themselves. Moving on to the 7 deadly sins, which, if you are a Christian, you've heard of plenty, even though they're not really in the Bible. It's more of something the church came up with later. Satanism advocates indulging in all these sins as they lead to physical, mental, or emotional gratification. On top of the 7 deadly sins, LaVey also makes an adjustment to the golden rule. Do unto others as they do unto you. You should do unto others as you would have them do unto you, but if your courtesy is not returned, they should be treated with the wrath they deserve. Essentially, LaVey is saying, don't turn the other cheek. If someone is messing with you, mess with them back. That's within your right. Here we see 2 major adversarial points against the Christian church. Of course, the 7 deadly sins being seen as gratification, so you should indulge them and you should be gratified, and also the golden rule being adjusted so that you treat people equally to how they treat you. Before we move on from this point, though, I want to introduce this because I thought it was funny. Satanists are encouraged to indulge in the 7 deadly sins, as they need hurt no one. They were only invented by the Christian church to ensure guilt on the part of its followers. The Christian church knows that it's impossible for anyone to avoid committing these sins, as they are all things which we, being human, most naturally do. After inevitably committing these sins, financial offerings to the church in order to pay off God are employed. Here, LaVey takes the knife and sticks it right at the throat of Christianity, stating, the only reason they want you to act so perfect all the time is because they know you can't do it, and then they can sell your guilt back to you. Indulgence, not compulsion. There is certainly much evidence that past religions are lifting more and more of their ridiculous restrictions. Even so, when an entire religion is based on abstinence instead of indulgence, as it should be, why waste time buying oats for a dead horse? The watchword of Satanism is indulgence instead of abstinence, but it is not compulsion. I grew up with a lot of guilt built inside of me that I wasn't really in control over, and it had a lot to do with my upbringing. I don't blame anyone in my family. I don't blame society at large. This is just simply what I was born with, and I'm dealing with it the way I can. And, I often thought of my indulgences in this way, where if I were to refrain from them, it'll be better for me. Often what I find is that when I completely deny my indulgences, I end up just being an asshole. I love the chapter on indulgence, not compulsion. And if there was one quote in the entire Satanic Bible that I could show people what I feel it truly represents and what it's getting at, it would be this quote here. The simple fact of the matter is that the very thing which has led this type of person to a faith which preaches abstinence is indulgence. Their compulsive masochism is the reason for choosing a religion which not only advocates self-denial, but praises them for it and gives them an avenue of expression for their masochistic needs. The more abuse they can stand, the holier they become. I know. This is a beautifully written passage here because he compares these holy men or this right-hand path church people to sex, to masochism, stating that the entire religion is based around if you don't sin, if you don't do anything bad, and you're a really, really good boy, then at the end you'll have this ultimate release of being holy. Yeah. So when I started, at first when I read this, I got a bit disgusted at like, oh, you have sex and open in front of people as a ritual during these satanic rituals. This is where I got it. That essentially what they were saying is they are imitating that climactic moment that all these religions are still striving for. Lastly, we have the most important chapter, which is beware of psychic vampires. It might be kind of confusing. You would think that the bad guy in Satanism would be God, right? No, the enemy of Satan, the Satanism in the Satanic Bible, are vampires, psychic vampires. Many people who walk the earth practice the fine art of making others feel responsible and even indebted to them without cause. They fill no useful purpose in our lives and are neither love objects nor true friends, yet we feel responsible to the psychic vampire without knowing why. If you've ever watched What We Do in the Shadows, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. The energy vampire, Colin, abusing people mentally so that they can feed off of that. That's what LaVey's talking about here. Maybe just a bit ahead of his time. You are being vampirized if you are incessantly called upon or expected to do favors for someone who, when you need a favor, always happens to have other pressing obligations. To break it down even further, psychic vampires are people who employ the tactic of passive aggression. They don't say what they mean, and to Satanists, that's very annoying, and I would have to say, I agree. One extra little tidbit here, because I was surprised. Yeah, this is not Satan. This is Baphomet. Baphomet's not Satan. I thought this was just a depiction. Baphomet is just a way to symbolize the powers of darkness with the fertility of a goat. Satanism has a lot to do about sex and wanting sex and sex being a thing that happens to you. The pentagram is upside down to make the goat horns appear on top. So if you look at the pure form right here, this is the human, kind of Da Vinci human. You see the star, and the point is up top. You kind of have the Trinity on the top half with the legs on the bottom. Here's it overlaid so you can kind of see it a little better. Then we go to the goat form, and we could see that the star is inverted so that you have the goat horns up, and here's it overlaid so you can see it better with the snout pointing down. That's all that is. It's symbolism. Interviews. Satanism doesn't have a lot of consistency to it. There are many different types of beliefs and different ways people choose to believe. I don't want to generalize people. I just want to present information so that you can decide for yourself. I went and asked the people. I went on Reddit and I went to satanic subreddits. They have like r/Satanism, r/Luciferianism, r/Theistic Satanism, r/whatever and so forth. So I just schizo posted on there and was like, yo, I'm looking for interviews for any Satanists. Is anyone down? So looking at the information we have here, 21% of them were non-theistic. They didn't believe in any sort of entity at all. They simply did this because they liked the philosophy of it or the community. With worship habits, we see just slightly over half of them, only 57 reported doing any sort of rituals or ceremonies along with their beliefs, while still 42% were non-practicing. They didn't do any sort of rituals at all. As for the reason for worship, I really only found two answers, which is the community, which 44% wanted, and then personal gain, which is what the rest wanted through these rituals. A lot of the interviews said they felt results from the rituals, and that's what made them theistic and continue practicing. To the ones that were theistic but were previously atheistic or non-theistic, I asked them why it changed them. 30% said it was purely philosophical, that after enough time of being non-theistic or atheistic and doing the rituals, they felt it was strange or weird to not believe in a deity. So through, the philosophies they followed or just through common thought, even though there's no experience, they became theistic through their beliefs. Whereas 69, almost 70, it was results from rituals. So these people actually saw something empowered, or one person told me they had their cat returned. All sorts of different reasons you can have a satanic ritual. It doesn't have to be anything big like ruling the world. It can be getting your cat back. Now with the types of interviews, it is so hard to pull off an interview, especially if you're not rich and famous and like you're nobody. But 90% of them are Reddit DMs or Discord DMs. Less than 10% actually end up getting on Google Meets and talking with me, which is the end goal. I want to talk with everyone face to face, get a feel and get a vibe for everyone, because it helps me understand what I'm researching even better, seeing the people behind it. Now, this may be a point in the video that's a bit controversial, but I just want to be honest, and that's the general vibe of the Satanist community. I went over 4 pretty big communities, and when I went back and looked at all the DMs, because all the Google Meets interviews were fantastic, they're lovely people, but the DMs, when I look back on the vibe and how I was treated, just asking basic questions. I got my face on there. I'm not just some random weird. I mean, you can click on my profile, see my face, go to my, you can see the reason I'm asking these questions. I would say over half of them were pleasant. These were nice people that I would talk to again, and really put some effort to help me understand. 20% were rather neutral, couldn't find anything good or bad to say. And then the rest, yeah, there is a little bit of a bad vibe in this community. Let's look at the notes. Okay. First of all, it's not that scary. I know when you see Satanism, why it's a big, powerful, scary name that sort of insists upon evil, right? More so, Satanism is an understanding of the adversarial philosophy, which is that we cannot live as perfect humans. We will have indulgences, and there will always be a balancing force to nature. When we try and go down too much into a pure path, we end up letting a lot of weak ideology. I can't say that. Here are my final notes on the Satanic Bible. It's not that scary. I know Satan associated with evil things. You think Satanic Bible, evil Bible. It's not that scary. It's actually fairly enlightening. And again, I love that chapter on indulgence, not compulsion. Secondly, it's mostly a reaction to a Christian oppressive society. And when I was interviewing people, this is what was primarily mentioned, is that in their Christian society that they were born over, it was unbearable. And when they theologically were booted out, this is where they ended up. Satanism can be very empowering for the marginalized, as it doesn't need you to be anything specific, and it celebrates the human in the flesh as is. And then finally, it's usually for good intentions. Like I said, more than half of the people that I talked to had good vibes, as in I would talk to them again and I had positive things to say about our interactions. I can't say that about every community, and 50% is not that bad. That was my coverage on the Satanic Bible. My name is Lane. This is Connection Lane. The goal is to present information to you so that you can make decisions for yourself. Not all of us have time to go over such complicated, hard ideas of spirituality. Unfortunately, it's what consumes all of my thoughts in my living, waking moments. So I'm going to be doing it probably until I stop breathing. Satanism's not scary. Bye-bye.